Zizek's book, The Parallax View, is a deep philosophical work explaining how we can understand contradictions in the world not by trying to fix or remove them, but by accepting that they are a basic part of reality. He uses the idea of parallax to show how two different views on the same thing can be true at the same time but cannot be combined into one unified perspective. This idea comes from the way vision works. When we look at something with one eye and then with the other, we see it from slightly different angles. Zizek applies this to philosophy, politics, and psychoanalysis, arguing that many of our deepest problems come from these kinds of split perspectives. His main point in the book is that reality itself is structured around gaps and contradictions, and instead of trying to close these gaps, we could understand how they function. He believes that subjectivity, that is, our experience of being individuals, is not a smooth, unified thing. The subject is split, caught between different perspectives and levels of reality. This splitting is what he calls the parallax gap. This is not a problem to be solved, but the very space where meaning, identity, and truth merge. In the introduction and the first chapter, Zizek lays out the basic idea of parallax. He explains that instead of choosing between two sides of a contradiction, for example, freedom or control, mind or body, we need to see how both sides are part of the same structure. The difference between them is not just a matter of opinion, but is built into the thing itself. He borrows ideas from Hegel, Marx, Freud, and Lacan to show that contradictions are not external to systems but internal. They are what keeps systems going. For example, capitalism works through constant crisis, and the human psyche is shaped by unconscious desires that are never fully satisfied. In the second chapter, he explores the philosophical implications of the parallax view. He uses examples from quantum physics, like the wave particle duality of light, to show how reality can behave in contradictory ways depending on how we observe it. This leads to the idea that there is no stable reality behind appearances. What we call reality is always shaped by our perspective. He connects this to Kant's idea of the gap between the nominal, thing in itself, and the phenomenal, thing as it appears to us, and expands this with Lacan's idea that the real is what cannot be symbolized or fully understood. The third chapter moves into politics and ideology. Zizek argues that ideology functions by hiding the contradictions that hold society together. He gives examples of how liberal democracy often pretends to offer free equality while covering up deep structural inequalities. The parallax view helps us see that freedom and unfreedom, inclusion and exclusion, are not opposites that can be separated, but are part of the same ideological system. A person may be free in a legal sense, while still being trapped in economic or cultural systems that severely limit their choices. In the fourth chapter, Zizek turns to psychoanalysis and the concept of the subject. He uses Lacan's theory to argue that the self is never whole. The subject is created by a gap between the symbolic, language and culture, and the real, that is, what cannot be fully grasped. Desire is not just about wanting something we don't have, but about trying to fill this fundamental gap. Zizek shows that identity is always split. We are never exactly who we think we are. The parallax view makes this clear by showing that every perspective on the self is incomplete and that we are always caught between two different versions of ourselves. The fifth chapter is more abstract and with metaphysics. He explores how being itself is split and how philosophical questions about reality must take into account the parallax gap. He draws on Hegel's dialectics and repeats the idea that contradiction is not a sign of failure, but a necessary part of how things exist. Rather than imagining a final truth beyond all perspectives, he argues that truth emerges from the tension between conflicting views. This is not relativism. He does not say that all opinions are equal, but a way of understanding how contradictions drive thought and action. In the final chapter, he brings together all the important threads of the book. He shows how the parallax view can help us think more clearly about politics, ethics, and subjectivity. He returns to the idea that instead of trying to eliminate conflicts or tensions, we need to work within them. Radical change does not come from trying to smooth things over, but from embracing the gap and acting within it. The parallax view is a way to confront the real difficulties of existence without giving into easy answers.